Hello, everybody. Hi, and welcome. You're about to learn the secrets of female pleasure, also known as women's anatomy of arousal. How cool is that? I'm here today with very special guest, Sherry Winston. I can't say enough awesome things about Sherry, honestly. Sherry is, oh gosh, where do I begin? Sherry is an expert in sensuality. She is a tantrika who knows what's what. Um, let's reference her bio. Holistic sexuality teacher Sherry Winston is a groundbreaking, and a lot of people say groundbreaking, but I want you to know she's actually groundbreaking, award-winning author and teacher who offers empowering, entertaining, erotic education for everyone. Sherry is the author of the award-winning Women's Anatomy of Arousal, Secret Maps to Buried Pleasure. You see what she did there? Buried pleasure instead of buried treasure. And it actually won the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists 2010 Book of the Year. I think that's amazing. And she's also Sexcraft, your hands-on guide to erotic play and practice. She's the founder of the Intimate Arts Center, and she offers pleasure-centered sex ed for grown-ups with a wide variety of practical and transformational intimate arts education. She delights in inspiring people to have a lot more pleasure, fun, and fulfillment. I'm so excited that she said yes to joining us today. Warm welcome to Sherry Winston. Let's get you on the video. Hi, sweetie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. It's just a pleasure to be chatting with you about some of my favorite subjects.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm glad that you're here. And, you know, I shared this with some of the ladies in my community. I run a free Facebook group for women called Erotic Empowerment for Women. And part of how I introduced you to them and the opportunity for them to hop on live and be here together with you is this is, you know, one of my first teachers in Tantra, in sensuality, in women's empowerment. You know, I think at the time I was coming from a place of, you know, just really discovering like, wait, you can even talk about this stuff. And then here you were, you know, at a conference teaching a class on it. So that's how you entered my life. And I am forever grateful because, you know, it changed my life.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate hearing that. And you're not the first person to tell me how significant this information was. And not even just the information, but meeting somebody who talked about sex. People will say to me, "You talk about sex like it's normal." Yeah, I think so. I think it is. So yeah, there's so many reframings of what's normal, what's how to be positive about sexuality, and there's a lot of learning we can do, and a lot of unlearning that we often have to do. Right, often both.
Absolutely. What have you seen like when you know, when people are in a place of really not accepting their sensuality or sex, not talking about it, really kept down by the shame that is rampant through our culture. Like, don't talk about that. That's not something to talk about. Like, what are some of the problems that people face when it's not something that they can talk about?
Well, I think a lot of people are walking around feeling a lot of shame and a lot of unhappiness and blaming themselves for that. They think there's something wrong with them, that they somehow are broken. They hear other people talking about the amazing sex they're having and the wonderful orgasms, and particularly for women, because orgasm is generally, for most of us, something we learn how to do. If you don't have that framing, that it's a learnable skill, and you aren't experiencing orgasms, then you start thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me. I got shortchanged, and all these other lucky women, the orgasm fairy came and sprinkled orgasm dust on them when they were babies. But that's just not how it is, not for most of us. Most of us, it's a learning process. And so if it's something that you haven't learned how to do yet, no worries, no problem, nothing wrong with you. It's just stuff you haven't learned yet. No reason to be ashamed. And then I'll just add, there's just buckets and buckets of things that we carry around shaming us about our sexuality. about our genitals. You know, the idea our genitals are icky and nasty and ugly, and we should do something about that. To our desires. You know, if we desire sex, we're sluts. If we don't desire sex, we're prudes. No win, no win situation. Um, and then I'll just throw in, we also don't learn relationship skills. And so we can often feel like maybe we're failures in the relationship realm because we haven't met our prince or princess charming and we're not living happily ever after. So all just total cultural BS, right? That's not how it works. And even when we meet somebody that we connect with and want to have an intimate relationship with, we don't just live happily ever after. If we're lucky, we find a person that we can learn with and grow with, and then we get to work on all of our stuff together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's just heaps of things that we don't know, but we somehow think we're supposed to know, you know, or that for men who partner with women and women who partner with men, that the men are just came equipped with knowing what to do to turn a woman on and give her an orgasm. And hello, if you're the person with that body, you need to know, you need to learn, and then you can teach your partners how to help you have that experience. But it's not really their job, and they didn't come with that information like magically written inside their skull. And in fact, particularly if you partner with male-bodied people and you're a female-bodied person, generally speaking, the things that work for one set of equipment don't work for the other one.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
like a PC and a Mac, you know. It's some of the buttons are the same.
Yeah.
Some things are just different.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some accessories that are plug and play.
Yeah.
And there are other things that are just, you know, if it's not your system, forget it.
Yeah, you just don't know how to operate it. You keep pushing the button going, this works on mine. Why isn't it working on yours?
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
It really
So just,
doesn't.
yeah, we need to understand some of those things. And then when we do, when we get that knowledge and that information, we start learning how to use it, it is incredibly empowering and exciting and can really open the door to amazing states of ecstasy and pleasure. So it's well worth the education.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hmm. Um, you know, it's funny. I think a lot of people actually let relationships go. Well, well, the chemistry's not there. You know, I don't like it when, you know, when he touches me. So there must be something wrong with him or with me or with the relationship. Like something is just not right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to you know, people who have that imagining, that's not necessarily the case. You know, that it is learnable. You know, when my boyfriend and I first got together, he would touch me and I would scream, but not in a good way. I
Yeah.
was I was like, ah, and it was like it would actually put me into like a state of fight or flight, like repeatedly. And I'm like, I guess this is just not going to work. But when I tried to end things with him, and he was like, well, why are you ending things? We have so much going for us and so much is going well. And I said, well, you know, when you touch me, I kind of don't like it. And he's like, I will learn. Teach me. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Because what there is to do at that point is take responsibility
Yeah.
and say, okay, you know, I didn't receive an owner's manual necessarily, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to formulate my owner's manual. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I think part of the education that you provide around the anatomy of arousal and so forth
Mm-hmm.
is as much of a owner's manual or a lead into it's like the introduction to the
Mm-hmm.
individual's owner manual, right? Because everyone is so
Yeah.
different. But at least you start to address the biology
Mm-hmm.
of what our systems do and are capable of. And now when people start to learn that, what's possible? Like what transformations have you seen in people who are willing to put in the time, put in the effort, and learn what's going on with their system?
Well, I'll answer that, but let me just add one other thing, which
Sure.
along with many different classes I teach, I've done the whole intensive just on touch skills, because you can get to the point where you say, the touching isn't working and I need to figure out what I want, what I need, how to communicate it, all skills, how to give feedback, make requests, and then your partner has to learn how to do those things, and usually it goes both ways. But where are you going to go to learn touch skills, right? Well, one of my books has got a lot of information about it, because that was one of the things I started to realize is there's not even a place to say, well, let's go to a workshop where someone can help us develop the vocabulary and the understanding and the frames that will help, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel for every single person. You just have to take, like what you were saying, is kind of the general owner's manual, and then fill in the specifics for you.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, so
I
and
love
then
that.
yeah, and then what happens, I mean, I know for myself, so when my mental map of my sexuality, of my arousal, of my body, of my genitals, when I figured those maps out, because I didn't get them given to me either, when I figured those maps out, and then my experience became congruent with my map, oh my gosh, what an expansion of what was possible. There were things I didn't even know you could do. I didn't know you could have hands-off orgasms, or that you could have 30 or 40 orgasms, or just an hour-long orgasm. I just didn't even know that was possible. But once you start getting those congruent maps and playing with them and practicing, just like learning how to play the piano. Right? It's you start with simple skills, and you start sort of understanding the instrument and what it can do, and then you just keep layering skills on top of skills, and it expands until the music that you make can become extraordinary. But it's
Mm-hmm.
only going to happen if you know that you're layering skills on top of skills.
Sorry, I was making sure the broadcast was working, and it started working. Technology.
Yay!
Skills on top of skills, as
Skills
we
on top
hear
of
audio on
skills.
top of audio.
Right? Yeah. No, anyway, well, I know exactly where it's going, but it becomes you develop mastery,
Mm-hmm.
is what it is, and you
Yes.
can make absolutely extraordinary music, and things that you didn't even think were possible just become something that you do.
Yeah.
We can all get there. That's the thing. It's not magic. It's not some people are special and lucky. It's learnable stuff, and you can get there, and I can get there, and anyone who wants to learn it can get there.
Absolutely. It's so
Mm-hmm.
heartening. And you know what I really love about what you said was the congruence, the opportunity to develop the congruence between what you can say, what you can speak, and the sort of interpersonal objective world, and the
Mm-hmm.
internal world of sensation and experience, and to start to generate that map that you can share. And like, when this happens, I feel this. Oh, when this happens, I feel this. Oh, and verbalize in the moment what you're experiencing or what you want more of, and all of those things. It really feels like liberation.
Mm-hmm. And the communication piece is a skill set. So how can you communicate in the moment when you're when you're playing a duet and you're making this extraordinary spontaneous music? How do you communicate in that context? Um, and I like to tell people, I think that we need three different kinds of communication about sex. We need to have the during,
Mm-hmm.
and then we usually need to develop some shorthand. We need to be able
Mm.
to say things. We need to just learn how to give feedback in a way that's a turn on, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to, okay, well, let's stop for a moment so I can give you a lesson. Like, that is not sexy. That's when my partner goes, oh my God, you got your teacher voice on. Like, whoops, that is not sexy, right? So we want to also have times that we talk about our sex lives with our partners, while we're not having it at all, where we're just sitting there talking or going for a walk and having a chat,
Mm-hmm.
and talk about how's your sex life going, what are our challenges, what could we do better, what would you like to explore. So there's that. And then the third thing is setting up time and space for learning play games, learning
Mm.
play education games. And in that framework, you set a time and a space, 5 minutes right here, right now. It could be a day, it could be 3 hours. And we're going to focus that particular session on learning this skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I want to learn how to give erotic feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we want to develop some shorthand.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I want to be able to let my partner know, if I want you to do something at a certain speed, I'm going to tap on your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And let's practice that. Or let's have touch workshops where we explore. I mean, and I've been with my partner now for 13 years, but we still don't, always get the right communication. So last time we were playing, I asked him to do something slowly. And so he did it taking, I don't know, 10 seconds. And I was annoyed because I said slow.
Yeah.
So later, not during, but later, we had a conversation. What does slow mean? What do I mean when I say slow? And maybe we could have slow and very slow and super slow, because I really wanted super slow. I
Mm.
wanted it to take 5 minutes. Get,
Ah.
from my toes to my crotch. And
Yes.
so let's have conversations. So next time I can say super slow and he'll
Yeah.
know I mean 5 minutes, because what I have to find out what goes on in his mind. What goes on in his mind is, I'm going to get bored.
Mm.
I'm like, not if you're working your way from my toes to my crotch and you take your 5 minutes. I will be the opposite of bored.
Oh, so
Right?
he's trying to care for you, and
Yeah.
meanwhile, you're wanting something different.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how will we know? Because there are no psychic partners.
Mm-mm.
Right? So that is a great play shop to have, where you might have a play shop about touch, where maybe you name touches, like spider fingers. This is spider fingers.
Mm.
Now we can have a play shop just about that particular kind of touch, where I do
Mm-hmm.
it and then my partner might do it back, and maybe he's doing this. I'm going, let me, I really appreciate positivity sandwich. I really appreciate that you're trying to give me that kind of touch. I would love you to notice when I'm doing it, I'm using my fingers in sequence here. I'll slow it down, and now we'll practice it until he gets it. And then I can go, I love spider fingers. And then I'll get it,
Yes.
right? If at that moment I know that's what I want. And that often you don't know. That's okay too. You don't always know.
No.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, often it can be like, I don't know anything
Yeah.
right now.
Right. Which is why it's helpful to have frames of, um, well, I use lots of maps, but the one
Mm-hmm.
that's on my mind at the moment is because I have one of my cats is circling my chair meowing. If you can
Mm.
hear him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was telling me something in cat language. But one of my maps is the pussies and puppies
Hmm.
model.
Okay.
And so many women, probably most women, our core erotic energy is more pussycat energy.
Mm-hmm.
And most men, their core erotic energy is puppy dog energy. Now, we all have both. We all have some of each. And we might have different moods. I might be in a puppy dog mood today, in which case,
Yes.
look out, right?
Yes.
Right? But you don't play with a cat the same way you play with a dog, do you?
No.
No, no. It's so funny. My cat is down here meowing. I know. You want to say hi? What? That's so funny. Okay, so if you want to make friends with my pussycat, do you run up and grab her and roll her over and rub her tummy? No,
No.
no. You'll be bleeding and she'll be out of there, right? No. So if you want to seduce the pussycat, first, how do? You get contact. You make eye contact and you connect. And then you approach at the pussycat's speed, the speed that's right for the pussycat, which could be different depending on the mood. How do you know? You have to read their signals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pussycat can't say slow, no, super slow, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
looking for their signals. Are they opening towards you,
Mm-hmm.
or are they closing and withdrawing from you? And if you go at the right speed, and then you start by touching the pussycat's least vulnerable places. And you rub their head, and you prove to the pussycat, I'm safe and I can give you pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And if you continue to seduce the pussycat at their speed, in attunement with their signals, sooner or later you will have that purring puddle of pussy that you were after.
Well said, Sherry.
If you go a little bit too fast and they tense up, it's going to take you twice as long to get them to
Mm-hmm.
trust you again.
Yes.
If you repeatedly do that, it's going to take them a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, for us, it's not a thinking thing.
Right.
It's an animal body thing. My animal body has to trust. My brain can go, oh yeah, this is my long-term partner. They're totally safe. But if I'm feeling like, wow, they just dove into my crotch too soon and I closed up like that,
Hmm.
that's my animal body. And she doesn't know about words. She has
Yes.
got to be reassured in a physical animal body way that,
Yes.
oh, my partner is back in attunement with me, not going too fast, not going for my vulnerable spots. Now, just contrast that with a puppy dog, right?
Right.
Dogs are such awesome animals. They've got this enthusiastic yes energy. But most dogs, you could meet most dogs and probably have them on their back rubbing their belly in about 30 seconds, right? Because they're like, rub it, please, rub it,
Please, please touch it.
right? Please touch it now, please, now, right? And so, again, if I understand my partner's really a puppy dog, and he loves if sex play starts with me diving into his crotch. That's great for him. He thinks that's awesome,
Ah,
right? But we need to communicate and understand that if I'm doing that, it doesn't mean that that's what I want, right? I'm doing that because I know my puppy dog likes it. But if he treats me like a puppy dog, not gonna work, right?
yes.
You gotta treat me like a pussycat. Plus, I'm in a
Yes.
puppy dog mood. And I'll
Right.
just say, in addition, culturally, we have a lot of confusion about masculine energy. And so I like to think of it as like the high masculine and the low masculine. So the high masculine is exemplified by the seeing eye dog. Dogs want to have a job. They love to have a job. They want to do a good job. They want to be in service. And the seeing eye dog is perfectly attuned to their person. They're being that, they have that young energy, they're guiding, they're keeping them safe, right? They're not running after every squirrel that goes by.
Mm.
The low masculine is the badly trained dog, right? That's the big
Hmm.
dog. You go over somebody's house and the dog is so excited to see you, they jump on you and knock you down and start humping your leg.
Yes.
Yeah. We have a
Yes.
lot of that in our culture. And that is unbalanced, unmitigated yang energy.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not in service, it's selfish.
Right. It's the opposite. I mean, I couldn't help but think I live near Stanford, and I couldn't help but think about the rape case there where, whatever happened, a man was like, oh, an unconscious woman, I'll use this as an opportunity to have sex with her. What? Like, untrained dog, bad dog, like,
Bad dog. Bad
bad
dog.
dog.
Very bad dog. Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Very,
But it's
very bad dog.
but it's so pervasive in the culture,
Right.
and they're really I'm looking, and I'm so eager for the opportunities to really retrain all of us in what it means to being seeing eye dogs for each other.
Hmm. Yes, because we all have both kinds of energy. Right now, you and I, we're being pretty yang. We're directed, we're focused, we're penetrating people with our ideas, right? This
Yeah.
is very yang. This is
Yes.
very dog-like. We're in service.
Hmm.
That's what we're here
Hmm.
for. We want to do a good job.
Yeah.
That we have that. So it's important we understand everybody's got all of this stuff.
Yes.
At the same time, when it comes to sex, that's where we tend to be most polarized. And it usually aligns with our plumbing, but not always. There are some people with vaginas and vulvas who have core dog energy, and that's not wrong or bad. That's just how they're wired,
Yes.
and vice versa. So it's really about understanding yourself, understanding your partner. We tend to be attracted to people whose energy is opposite. That's why there's
Yes.
attraction, positive and
Yes.
negative polarity.
Yes.
And then we get pissed off because they don't understand us and they're not the same. But if they were
Mm.
the same, I wouldn't want to have sex with them. Then I would want to be
Right.
friends.
Right. Right. That's where you get the polarity with
Yeah,
people.
right.
I'm curious. So in the same way that the masculine, the untrained dog versus the trained, seeing eye dog, is there a balanced counterpoint for the feminine?
I think there is. So I had a cat that was a rescue cat, and she had been dumped on the street, and who knows what happened to her.
Hmm.
She never could trust. And I was dedicated to trying to heal her and get her to be able to turn into that purring puddle of pussy like every other cat I'd ever had, who would
Mhm.
be like, sure, pet me until I dissolve. I'm happy to surrender, right? And so she, because of her trauma, um, sometimes if I took the right amount of time and I was really tuned in and paying attention, I could get her to relax enough to rub her tummy. And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden she would realize that she was vulnerable and she would scratch me or bite me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So about every 4 to 6 months for the many years I owned her, she never, ever got over it. And so one of the things that can happen with the feminine, particularly when it's wounded, or with the pussycat when it's wounded, is it never learns how to trust. Now, she was a cat. She couldn't go to therapy. She couldn't do her stuff
Right.
or read books, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
she couldn't do some, embodied healing work and get over that. People can.
Mhm.
So that's one thing that can happen. The other thing that I think is a common pattern is because we, and I'll say we as core yin people,
Mhm.
probably have uh, probably have vulvas, um, as those kinds of
Often.
people, often, probably more often than not, as those kind of people, we still have to make our way in this world.
Yes.
So I've created a business and run a business and had employees and had to be a boss and had to negotiate contracts and all of these things that really required yang energy, those puppy dog, directed, focused skills. And then what happens in the bedroom is I can forget how to turn that off and
Mm.
let my pussy cat out. I can be
Yes.
so used to being dominant
Mhm.
that I don't know how to surrender and relax. That can happen.
Yes.
Then perhaps I'm attracted to a man who hasn't really owned his own yang energy.
Mm.
Maybe he's, what the stereotype of the sensitive new age guy.
Mhm. Mhm.
He's really good at listening.
Mhm. Mhm.
um, but I'm unhappy in bed because he's not taking charge. He's not bringing that, he's not bringing the fire that I'm looking for.
Right. The dog thrust.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's not bringing the direction and the focus. And again, I could be unhappy because I'm holding too much of that energy and he's not holding enough, but we fit together because we're both kind of out of balance.
Right.
And so then I can be mad at him or he can be mad at me. We could all be mad at each other.
Yeah. I'm not getting my needs met. I'm not getting my needs met. No one's getting their needs met. Ah.
We call that a needs off.
Ah. Well said.
Right. So it's so helpful to sort of be able to understand, again, there's no right or wrong, but to understand our own sort of template, our own balance, the areas we might need to work on. Maybe I need to work on learning how to relax, just for example,
Yeah.
how to rest.
Mhm.
Right? My pussycats are so good at resting. They're so good. They're like experts. I can just, like be like a pussycat. It's okay to rest. But for so long, I was so driven that that was a hard thing for me. So, and it can manifest, it's not just about sex, it's about
Yeah.
all else.
Yeah. I can imagine some of our viewers writing it on a post-it note, like, be like a pussy, rest. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So
I,
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, it's so easy to talk about so many things, but I want to make sure we spend a little time talking about anatomy.
That's
So we
exactly where I was going to go
perfect.
next. Yeah. So,
Okay.
the title of this talk, "The Secrets of Female Pleasure: Women's Anatomy of Arousal,"
Mm-hmm.
and this is some of the tools that are so exciting because it's like the introduction to generating your own manual for
Mm-hmm.
self-understanding and self-love and sensation and pleasure and growth. So yes, share with us, if you will, Miss Sherry, how does anatomy connect with pleasure and women's orgasm?
Well, so for starters, even with the framework we just came from of talking about these things is really useful because, by the way, we call it a pussy. Interesting, huh? Yeah. So that's not just from nowhere.
Not an
So
accident.
it's not an accident. So, uh, the short version of it is that the what I will call female genitalia, but that again, I mean by that vulvas and vaginas and the associated parts. People who have that equipment have just as much erectile tissue as penis owners. Now, we know about penis. We understand that it has that ability to go from small and soft to big and hard. And it can do that because it's made out of, mostly made out of erectile tissue. And that is tissue that's like a sponge. It starts out like if you use like a beauty blender sponge or even your kitchen sponge, you know, when it's not when it's dry, it's kind of small and little, and it's like a penis, it's small and little. Of course, it's soft, but same thing. But when it becomes engorged, it swells up. It fills with blood, and it dramatically changes size, shape, color, heat, sensitivity, because it's filling up with blood. Women have just as much erectile tissue. Pound for pound, inch for inch, female genitalia has a network of structures that, if you add it all up together, is a penis's worth of erectile tissue. Now, this is like why I say that for most of us, we're trying to play the piano and we think there's 22 keys, right? Because we only know about a little bit of that erectile tissue. We might know about really good bits of it, but it's not the whole instrument. And so the erectile network is composed of the head of the clitoris. Oh, wait. Me too. Can you see you see the pussy pillow?
Yes, I can. Yay, demonstration.
Pussy pillow. Okay, so the head of the clitoris right here. This is the part we mostly know about. Yay for that. It's like the jewel in the crown, super sensitive, absolutely wonderful piece of equipment. But it's like the tip of the volcano. So the clitoris has a shaft, which is under the hood here. The clitoris has two legs, and the legs come down like that. This is all underneath all of this tissue. So you can't see the legs. You can feel the shaft, and you can feel when they're engorged, you can feel the top of the legs up here. So those three structures make up the clitoral system, but there's more. We have big wads of erectile tissue here and here under the labia on either side. And these big, they're shaped like an upside down comma. And so here's the fat part down here, and then the thin tail goes up and connects to the shaft of the clitoris. And it's on either side of the vaginal opening. Interesting. That's not all. There's erectile tissue that we can access from inside the vagina. There's erectile tissue above the roof. So if you went in and up, this is what people are calling the G-spot. But the man who it's named after doesn't have one. And I hate having my body parts named after men. I go with the urethral sponge, which was named by the Federation of Feminist lay health workers, who came out with a book in the late 70s called New View of a Woman's Body. And by the way, that was the book that got me started on what I now call the hunt for buried pleasure. So that's above the vaginal canal, and then there's erectile tissue under the floor. Now you put all of those pieces together, the erectile tissue under the perineum, the erectile tissue around the urethra. It's a tube of erectile tissue that surrounds the urethra. So it's the end of the tube is here. That's the bottom of the two vestibular bulbs, and the three parts of the clitoral structure. And voila, that's the female erectile network. So once you know about all of those parts, if you take the time and you pleasure them the way they like, and they all get engorged, that experience of having all those separate but connected structures engorged expands arousal, access to orgasm becomes easier, more orgasms, everything becomes easier. Skills like having orgasms with intercourse, which, by the way, most women don't have orgasms with intercourse, or not easily, or not often, or it's just not the best way for most women to get to orgasm. But how to have an orgasm while you're having intercourse is a learnable skill. For one thing, it involves making sure that especially the vestibular bulbs are engorged. Right? Because look, they're on either side of the opening. And then there's also erectile tissue on top and on the bottom. When that's all engorged, you have a whole big fat circuit, a cuff of erectile tissue around the vagina, and a second circuit of erectile tissue with the clitoral structures. You've got these
Mhm.
two overlapping, interlocking circuits of erectile tissue, and that's what you want.
That's wonderful. And so the vestibular bulbs and so forth. So there's two networks of erectile tissue. Is that what you said?
Well, they're connected. I
Okay.
call it one network, but it's got
Yes.
multiple pieces.
Okay. And
Parts.
so one is the clitoris,
Right. The three parts of the
the three
clitoris.
parts of the
So
clitoris.
there's like the wishbone,
Yep.
the shaft,
Yep.
and the head.
Yes. So
Hmm.
like kind of like that.
Kind of like this, I would
That.
say.
Okay. And then
There. There's the
the
head of
this
the clitoris.
and then
There's the legs.
the legs.
Right. Yeah, and the
Are
head.
the legs the vestibular bulb?
No, they're not.
Oh. Okay,
They're
so that's
not the
different.
vestibular bulbs. It's a separate structure. Correct.
But also erectile
Yeah.
tissue.
Yes.
Why don't they teach us this stuff?
So just I don't think we ever mentioned, but my background before I was a sexuality teacher is that I'm a certified nurse midwife, gynecology practitioner, registered nurse, childbirth educator, massage therapist, and artist. That doesn't count so much
So
here.
you're
Um,
overqualified for almost anything except for exactly what you're doing.
I think I'm highly qualified for many things, but the fact is, I was already working. I had already done all that education. I had all those initials. I had studied anatomy 5 times, and I didn't know this stuff
Wow.
until I came across that book. And when I read the book and I got to that chapter about anatomy and it said vestibular bulbs, and I went, what? I've never heard of that. How could there's a part in female genital anatomy that I haven't heard of?
And
I
you were a
thought that was crazy.
gynecologist
Yeah,
nurse.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was an expert in this equipment and I'd never heard of it. So I immediately went and did my homework, well, home play, and discovered, sure enough, I had them and they were really obvious once they got engorged. And
Mm,
I literally was like, how could I have not known this? Here they are in my own body. And when they get big and engorged, you're like, whoa, yeah, there they are. I mean, they're just like, because they weren't in my map, I didn't recognize them. And I also wasn't playing with them because I didn't know they were there.
Now, how can
Right.
you play with them? How is that?
Oh, well, you can play with them by squeezing the whole vulva. You could, when you have a thigh up against your crotch, when you're
Uh-huh.
like riding a thigh and that feels so good, that's the bulbs that are getting it. So broad, diffuse stimulation from outside. So this is a great first area of the genitals to play with because you know how pussycats are. You don't want to go for the
Mm,
most sensitive, vulnerable spot first. That's not going to feel good.
right.
So the bulbs, you can play with them from out here. You can squeeze them this way. You can rub here. You can press,
Amazing.
nuzzle them. You can come around from the edge and kind of go around them. So many fun things to do with the bulbs. And once they're big and puffy,
Uh-huh.
then it might be a good time to play with the shaft or the
Oh.
legs. And
Mhm.
only then might it be a good time to play with the head and the bulbs and the head and the bulbs and only at that high level of arousal and engorgement of all the more external parts is it time to go inside with perhaps fingers
Mhm.
and then play with the internal erectile tissue.
Mhm.
And then at that point, when everything is really engorged, it might be time, if you happen to have a penis handy, to put one in. But
Mm,
if you're putting that penis in before all of this is engorged, I call that premature penetration. It's
mhm.
not going to feel fabulous. It might feel okay. It might be nice, but it's not going to be like, oh my God, that's so good, right? If you want that response, you wait till everything is really engorged and that person is in deep, deep arousal trance. That's when you put something inside,
Mhm.
it's going to feel awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. You
Okay.
know,
Was that our, like, we should be ending thing?
that was the mysterious thing. I think there's just a confluence of technological glitches
Hmm.
because I never have alarms that go off like that ever, and I think it's just spirit saying yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The technology agrees with us. Yes.
um, I love when you said arousal trance.
Oh, that's an important piece. Arousal is an altered state of consciousness. It's a trance state, just like any other altered state. And what we can learn are the skills we can learn. That's what my second book really focuses on. Succulent Sexcraft is about learning how to become an erotic virtuoso, but it really means developing the skills so that you can enhance your trance. And I will throw in, even though we don't have time to address it, that the trance of arousal and the trance of labor are the same trance.
Wow. Yes,
Mhm. Yeah,
I've heard of orgasmic birth.
I've seen it. It's
Ooh,
mind-boggling.
amazing. What better way to come into the world than on a wave of absolute bliss?
Oh, absolutely amazing. So one of the things that's interesting, because I did home birth for a long time and then birth center birth, but when babies, even when labor doesn't feel ecstatic or
Mhm,
orgasmic, which is
mhm.
more likely the case, but when women are really deeply in that trance, it goes most effectively and efficiently,
Mhm, mhm,
even if it isn't becoming intensely pleasurable. But
mhm.
however it is, as soon as the baby is born, everybody's ecstatic when you're in an environment where you haven't screwed up the trance.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so like a
Hospitals are
container.
hospitals are good at messing up your trance state,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It would be like trying to get turned on and have an orgasm.
yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, this is really dangerous. You have to go to the hospital, put on the stupid gown, be under the flashlight. Strangers are going to pop their heads in intermittently and fill you up. And we're going to attach you to a machine that will tell us how you're doing. And
Mm.
you've got, this much time to get wet and have an orgasm. Okay, ready, go. Yeah, that's what we do to women in labor.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
no wonder so many women have C-sections because they have what's called failure to progress, which means labor doesn't go where it needs to go because they have not gotten into the trance state because we've done, as the professionals, everything we could to screw that up. It's
Ah!
amazing. It's amazing to me that women manage to have vaginal births in the hospital ever.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just the
absolutely,
power of labor and nature. Yeah,
man. Um,
yeah.
so I have a couple of questions here from ladies in my free Facebook group, the Erotic Empowerment for Women group. So one of the questions I wrote, "What questions do you have about feminine pleasure or arousal?" And one of my community members said, "I hope it never ends. Will it?" And
As in,
I had to
as in, will it?
clarify,
Yeah.
like,
Okay. Good.
did you mean like, in a moment, or did you mean like aging? And she said, yeah, as we age. So I said, okay,
Yeah.
great question. So I
Yeah.
promised to ask you about that. What are your thoughts?
So aging, as a woman of a certain age now, I can speak with a different kind of authority than I could 20 years ago. So things change as we get older, and that's just the reality. I mean, even from 20 to 40, things are different, but from 40 to 60, they can get really different than they were. So I think we need to understand the normal changes of aging. We need to recognize that our sexuality isn't going to be the same as it was. Um, there are lots of things we can do supporting our health and supporting our libido and our sexuality that can mitigate some of that
Mm-hmm.
to varying degrees. Um, and it's also an amazing opportunity, I think, all of these different phases and stages in life.
Mm-hmm.
I personally am very grateful that I know what I know because otherwise menopause would have really kicked my libido's butt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have other health issues, so that made my libido even more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But I recognize that when I was younger, my sex drive was leading. And I'd be horny, and then I'd want to do something about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I feel desire. I'm going to play with myself, or go see if my partner wants to play, or whatever, right? So, but the thing that was leading was that erotic energy was there, and I wanted to do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's the other way around. I have to consciously choose. I would like to go to the place where my erotic energy is, but it isn't here. So I have to consciously do the things that will get me there, and then I will access it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I didn't have a partner, if I didn't if I wasn't that thrilled with how my sex life used to be, like if it had always been kind of not great for me,
Mm-hmm.
um, if I had a lot of shame around it, I could see I'd be just like, oh, great, I'll never go there again,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Like,
Only
oh, we're done
because
with that.
I'm done. And that's what some women say. So that being doneness, that's the choice. You can say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, the fire isn't leaving me. So, or we could say, oh, I'm going to go collect some wood and build a fire.
Oh, what a
Because I
great metaphor.
remember the fire was good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even
And
if the fire was never good, there's still hope, right? To develop and
oh, yeah.
cultivate. Like if you're willing to put in the time and the intention and the commitment to building the tools, building the know-how, the strategies, and it's not that complicated, but creating the time and space to do so is of
Mhm.
paramount importance, and it's never too late.
It's never too late. And also, what I've seen for women who get a new partner and have a sort of juicy falling in love thing, oh, it comes instantly. It's just like, oh, there's the fire again, right? So I think it's also very different if you're in a relationship where you've been in it for a long time and there's just the challenges inherent in keeping a juicy sex life going after, 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So
Is
there's
there, I know a
different
lot of
things.
ladies ask about this, and I work with them in my capacities and realm of suggestions. I was just curious what your thoughts are about how to keep it going and keep it wonderful over time.
Conscious um, consciousness. I mean, choosing it, making the time and space, making the dates, um, working through the other relationship stuff, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if I'm mad or if resentful or hurt or my partner is whatever, if we've got other crap going on, we're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get to the juicy, yummy sex part. How do
Mm.
you have to create that a loving, positive relationship. It, taking time to play the games, taking time
Mm-hmm.
to communicate, making sure that you're scheduling time for intimacy,
Yes.
right? Because we're all so busy. So those are all strategies, but that all has to come from wanting to do it,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a live question. What resources would you recommend to people who expand their sexual triggers from limited or potentially shameful triggers, i.e., taboo topics like incest, rape, etc., are only able to come in one position or technique, especially resources for people without a lot of money? So, recommended people to expand their sexual triggers from limited or potentially shameful triggers. So
I
it
got,
sounds like there's a limited scope of what is the participants' turn on, in a way.
which is very common.
Yeah.
So I will honest. So this sounds a little, self promoting, but honestly, you want my 2 books. So Women's Anatomy of Arousal, which is all the equipment you have. They're each only $20, right? This is also available as an audiobook with anatomy PDF download. This is available as Kindle, although it's not as beautiful on the Kindle as
Mm-hmm.
it is looking at the physical
Will you
book.
do me a favor? Just hold that up so we
Oh,
can see it.
so that's Women's Anatomy of Arousal.
It's a beautiful book, Sherry.
Thank you. I'm very, very proud of it. And then the other one, I can't reach it.
It's
It's over
okay.
there.
You can just tell us about it.
Succulent Sexcraft over there. Succulent Sexcraft is about learning how to use your tools and toolkit. So in short, though, we can reprogram ourselves. So negative messages, we can reprogram from like, oh, I can't do that. I'll be too slutty to, oh, I can do that. I'm so slutty. Slutty is good. Slutty is sexy, right? We can reprogram.
Mm-hmm.
So that's using our mind tools. We can do that in conjunction with embodied practices. So
Mm-hmm.
breathing, sounding, pelvic floor muscles, and the positive messages all at the same time. Powerful reprogramming.
Mm-hmm.
If we have a partner, we can share with our partner those negative tapes and messages and ask them to help reprogram. So your partner could say to you, "Ooh, you are so slutty. It's delicious," right? Um, or I love your pussy. I'm just so happy when I get to get up close with it. Like if you've got that shame about that.
Yeah.
Um, Therapy can be a wonderful thing, especially if you're healing really deep trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big fan of that and all kinds of other work. Finding other people who have gone through that path of healing that kind of trauma. And so there's books and there's groups and there's that sort of thing. So get help with that. If
Mm-hmm.
you've really had horrible things happen to you. And unfortunately, as we know, many people have.
Yes. And it's
So
possible to
that's,
get creative with therapy. There's a lot of community organizations that
yeah.
offer counseling and guidance, even a local church, if they're overall kind of sex positive or what
Mhm.
have you, might be a resource for you to reach out to and not have to pay that high amount that therapy can sometimes cost.
In fact, I know for my books and other books, women who get together and do a study group with a book like that, or a book about the healing journey from trauma, and read it together, and find the other people in your community who are healing on that same journey, because they're there. They're there because
Yeah.
they're everywhere.
Yeah,
And
it
then,
tends to turn into a confluence of just nobody's talking about it. So if you're courageous and you're
yeah.
vulnerable to say, hey, I'm going through this journey of growth. Would you like, does it speak to you and would you like to join me? Then you can be the font of leadership to really create something new and a new conversation for possibility and generating the community and the healing that you're
Yeah.
looking for.
And then the last piece I'd say is sort of about retraining our pathways. So if you only have one very narrow pathway to get to orgasm, first thing I would say is, awesome, you have a path. Cool, that's so great. Now you can start learning how to expand your path and make new paths. And I go into that indeed, actually some in both books, but more in Succulent Sexcraft, about how we can retrain our responses and expand our pathways. But it is totally doable as well. So that's, I know, kind of was a big question. So
Nah, that's
yeah.
awesome. Okay, so this will be the last question.
Mhm.
Um, I'm interested in tips and techniques for self-pleasure practices. Thank you.
Well, so many ideas. So it's great to take some time, once a week, really give yourself an hour or two. I mean, that is a beautiful thing. It's also great to just do little bits regularly, 5 or 10 minutes every morning, or 5 or 10 minutes before you go to bed. Don't necessarily focus on orgasm, focus on pleasure and arousal. And again, think of it as a trance state that you want to enhance. So how do you do that? What are your favorite ways to get into trance? Dancing, doing yoga, listening to music, chanting, singing. So think about what already are your favorite ways to get tranced out. Um, and then run experiments. You are your own learning laboratory. And you can start by, I talk about our toolkits: mind, body, heart, and spirit. So we've got the mind tool. One of them is our awareness. That's like our primary mind tool. So the next couple of times you're going through the solo sex journey of arousal. And solo is going to be better because you can pay attention. With a partner, they're always in your attention. But so just notice what you do. Notice your posture, notice how you breathe, notice how you hold your body, and then run some experiments where you change something up. So for example, maybe you notice as you get in your orgasm, you breathe fast but shallow. Next time, when you get there, breathe fast but deep.
Mm.
Then
Mm.
notice what happens. And if anything good happens, practice it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then run another experiment where when you get to high level arousal, you breathe slow and deep and notice what happens,
Mm.
and so forth. So breath, sound, movement, particularly pelvic floor muscles,
Mm-hmm.
and your pelvis, rocking your pelvis and your spine are some of the key movements, but there's obviously many. Sound is huge. Sound is our big inhibition, I think, for a lot of us. And I'm not talking about making porn sounds, by the way. I'm talking about finding your own soundtrack,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So and again, experiment. Just start with, breath sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then a little focusing. How does that feel in your body? How does it feel when you're just starting to get turned on to make sounds? How
Mm.
does it feel at mid-level arousal to make sounds? How does it feel at high level? How does it feel when you're having an orgasm? And
Mm.
then maybe play with O's, and then, and just playing with different sounds, noticing what works. And the more you play with it, the more you'll start finding yourself, the sound will start making itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you're starting out by making sounds, not in a porny way, not in a
Right.
faking it way, but just making little sounds and noticing what happens,
Mm-hmm.
and finding what works and what's good for you and enhancing that. And then one day, suddenly you're going to be in your pleasure and know you're going to be like, whoa, listen to me. Like it's just
Mm.
happening all on its own. That's the soundtrack of your pleasure just coming out
Oh, I love
spontaneously.
that. Letting it be
It's a,
kind of just a free cacophony rather than, and I think that's a big difference between like, the free liberated sounds and the, porny sounds is porn is like a construction, right? Like, oh, I'm supposed to make this sound now. Ooh, ah, oh, right. It's manufactured.
yeah, it's not real.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not
Versus
real.
a release.
Yeah. Porn is a terrible teacher of technique. Most porn, I'll say. The vast, vast majority of porn is a terrible teacher of technique.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not the place to go to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are places to go to learn. So,
Yes. Yes. Like your
um,
books and like your classes and like your workshops. And
uh,
um,
oh, and I just actually got an amazing resource. I was
oh,
on
good.
the podcast, the
Mm-hmm.
Shameless podcast, and they told me about something called omgs.com.
Mm.
And if you go backslash shameless, I guess it's an affiliate for them, but
Hmm.
I think I don't remember, it's like 20 or $30 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is a library of short videos of women pleasuring themselves, not in a porny way, but in a, this is what I do, this is how I touch, naming the different kinds of touch, the different approaches. Um, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just like falling in love with this website. I have
Oh,
to contact them and
fantastic.
let them know because it's just brilliant. So yeah,
Yeah.
so
Fantastic. And that answers a question that we got of, is there a good teaching porn recommendations? And someone else says that's a great site. So it sounds like
yeah,
fantastic. Thank you for
that's a
sharing.
great site. There's the Feminist Porn Awards,
Mm.
um, and then also places like the women-run sexuality boutiques, such as Good for Her in Toronto,
Mm-hmm.
which they're part of one of the founders of the Feminist Porn Awards. They have an excellent area on their website of porn that is woman friendly, with real female orgasms, people without enhanced bodies. So
Mm.
that's a great resource. And they're also just a fantastic women run sexuality boutique that does lots of great education. So places like that are the other resource.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah.
And what are you up to? How can people find out more about you?
Well, you can go to my website,
Mm-hmm.
intimateartscenter.com.
Mm-hmm.
Intimate Arts, plural, center, spelled the American way.
Mm-hmm.
There are blog posts that talk about the anatomy. There's some video blogs. You can find my books there. I have online recorded courses and classes. If you really want to get into the anatomy, I have a 4-part, like 4+ hour course that you can do at your own pace, at your own home. Um, oh, and I've just also started a something called Winston Wellbeing, which is a portal into a natural products company, really a wholesaler that I've been working with as a practitioner, but I can now extend that to any of my fans. And it's a place where not just supplements, but some sort of non-food natural things, makeup, skin products, and such. And it's a 20% discount. And we get a tiny little piece of every sale. So it's a great way of supporting our work, getting the products you're probably getting anyway, and getting them for a really good price. So Winston Wellbeing is kind of happening now. Yeah, all of that.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
good, Sherry. Thank you so much for being here today. Now, if you're watching this and you didn't get a chance to ask your question, or you're watching a recording of this, and you find that you have a question, don't be afraid to reach out to either Sherry or myself. We're both happy to help you and provide some support and resources for you. And if you'd like to be a part of my online Facebook group and you're not already, look us up on Facebook. It's Erotic Empowerment for Women. There's only one. And click join and we'll approve your request. We do look at every person who applies to join to make sure they're a real person. And so that it really feels like a safe space to kind of have a home for our sensual discovery and to continue having these empowering conversations together. Sherry, thank you so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate you sharing your kindness and your generosity and your wisdom and just your phenomenal understanding about how it all works and your generous spirit about really wanting women to have a method to have it feel better.
Well, thank you. And I mean, ditto. Thanks for the amazing work you're doing and having me on and creating this opportunity to share. So, thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, everybody, we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Have a fantastic day. We'll see you all real soon.
Bye.
Bye.